If anything becomes apparent as we move through the meeting, please let me know. Public participation. Now, public forum was held on the 12th of July, but there were no public forum items at that time. So then moving to item 3.2, deputations by appointment. We have 3 deputations this morning, one of which is from Don Gould in person, and then we have Samantha Fay and Philip Duffy, who will be presenting their deputations online. So item 3.2, deputations, Don Gould. I would invite you to the table for your 10-minute deputation this morning. You know the drill. If you wanted to leave time for questions within the 10 minutes, it's entirely open to you to do so. So thank you for joining us.
Morning, Andrew. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. There's going to be a little bit of crossover in this one this morning.
If you can just pop the microphone on. Yep, thank you.
Are we on now? Yes, we
You are.
appear to be. There's a little bit of crossover on this one this morning. I'll start again. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. This one's got a little bit interesting for me. Essentially, what I'm going to be asking and talking about is the governance in this room putting a focus back on pulling back from the sewer crisis wastewater treatment plant lens, because you've had a very deep dive into that, and really that job has got done. There's been a community action group established, which are very effective, a Facebook established, very effective chat groups and all sorts of things. So there's a lot of the public watching that now like a hawk. And in the meantime, what concerns me is some other things are slipping around the community. And that's essentially what my presentation is going to be about this morning. So, okay, so I've just covered out that slide, really. So I thought we were going to have a bit of a talk about the situation of flooding down in Peter Tim's and down in Edgware Village and that sort of thing. But David Lynch actually reached out to me and he said, well, you've got other issues in your suburb, Don. You really should be bringing those to the table. So I went down and had a bit of a look at those, and we've all read about those down in Marihow with the flooding that's been happening there. So as I'm saying, there are other priorities in the system. And then my wife said, well, actually, Don, I think you need to get closer to home and have another look at the sewerage running across the footpath outside our house. 7 years, folks, 7 years the sewer system has been there and it doesn't work. That's my dad. He passed away just recently in June. I'm going to read, I can't read this from the screen and I can't read it on there. That's very difficult. He was the agricultural attaché to the New Zealand High Commissioner in 1973. At 37, he went on to be the Assistant Director General for Agriculture and Fisheries and had 5,000 staff that he was responsible for. So there's no one in this room that I would suggest that had a more influential role in the community, feeding hundreds of millions of people than my dad. No one more earning more, no one more important to the world's population, is what I spoke about actually at his funeral. However, at 17, when our sewer blocked outside our house because we had a problem, he got out there. He was not so much a bigwig to get out there with a spade, dig it up and fix it. The reason I mention this is because I can't go out there and fix. I'm going to go back a slide. Apparently I'm not going to go back a slide. I am going to go back a slide. I can't go and fix this thing because that little stand-uppy thing out behind the, up against the fence, the green thing there, is a pod with a bunch of complicated electronics that make this thing turn on, turn off, tell the council whether it's working, not working. Apparently that doesn't work at all because the council didn't know it wasn't working until my neighbour actually pointed out it's been overflowing for the last 3 days. Okay, you can all chip me for my observation skills later. Let's move forward again. Complex system of tickets. So, one of the things we've talked about in the members' briefing, the candidate briefing that's just come out, is using any means possible, and I suggest including technology to fight climate change. So one of the things I focused on this week was putting my information in as tickets rather than through the SnapSend Solve, rather than using the call centre, because I rang the call centre late on Tuesday evening and they said they've been absolutely inundated and overwhelmed. So of course I'm going to put my inquiries through just using the app on my phone, which we've all been telling people, use the app, use the app, use the app. And then you don't answer the tickets till 3 a.m. the following day after I've already had to ring in, because the social media team have said, please just ring our call centre. So the mixed messaging there is somewhat frustrating, to say the least. In the meantime, the reason the little picture of the bell and the mayor is there is because, frankly, reporting this sort of stuff is a job for the press who aren't here today. When we've got a crisis going on in communications, I really think we need our comms teams moved over to helping processing our ticket pile. Now, that's an opinion, obviously. And the point of governance is that it's your role to actually look at those things and ask those tough questions and satisfy yourselves that that the way we're deploying resources at times is the best way to go about those things, not reactionary off what I might have to say off Facebook on a day. However, 6 o'clock that same evening, I reported a fault with a light post. It was my ticket for the light was processed by 8 o'clock, and there was a team on site the following morning to fix the damn thing, not 3 days later. So clearly we get priority on electricity, we don't get priority on wastewater, which brings me back to my point that wastewater needs governance lens over the top of it in more than just the sewage treatment plant. The sewage treatment plant is just a massive problem. 66% of our people are unhappy with wastewater. I notice we say that 44% are happy. That means that 66% are unhappy. We have to start getting more of this stuff right, because we're not winning the battle currently. Though I have confidence we can. 27% are unsatisfied with the condition of our roads and footpaths. Well, it was going up in my suburb until we started getting raw sewage running across it. We are simply not meeting our community commitment outcomes. A healthy environment, healthy water bodies is not being met when there's raw sewage going over my footpath, down the side of my house. I haven't even been to have a look there. I'm too frightened to think what might be there right now. Guys, we just need more focus moved around on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, realising that this is on the agenda as a deputation on the Christchurch wastewater treatment plant recovery update and the update on community wellbeing response workstream, in that context, are there any questions? So what I'm saying is, if we can focus any questions on the matter that's on the agenda this morning that the deputation was intended to relate to.
I guess I have.
Sam.
Hey, thank you, Don, for coming in. I do appreciate it. So, I mean, just in light of that, do you have a particular view on the report that's presented today?
No, one of the problems that we've got, actually, yes, I'm glad you asked the question, actually, Sam, because one of the things I was thinking about last night is I need to tie this presentation into that. So I did go and dive into the report. One of the problems we have at present is that we'll see a PowerPoint presentation very shortly. Normally what happens is those sorts of presentations come with the agendas, so we can read those, and I can't comment on that because we haven't seen it yet. It'll happen behind me. So in moving our lens away from that, we're going to need to push those reports back into the public light in some way, so that members of the public, like myself and the community groups we've risen up, can actually push back and comment on that. We'll have to wait to see what they've got to say and come back next week with any view.
But the report went public Friday afternoon, I think it was.
Sorry, didn't catch it.
Okay, no, that's fine. I was just wondering.
Bit busy with a few other
No
problems.
problem. Cool. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, thank you. No further questions? All right, Don, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to come and talk to us this morning.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right, so now moving to our second deputation. Samantha Fay, we've got you online. Good to have you with us. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. You have 10 minutes to present to the council, and if you wanted to allow time for questions within that 10 minutes, it's up to you to make that choice. Thank you for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you. E tipi ahau ki te whenua o ki tu reo ki te noho ahau ki te whenua o ngāi tuahuririri, ki te mihi ahau ki te mana whenua o tēnei wāhi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Samantha Fay, and I've lived and owned property and worked in the South Brighton and South Shore community for in excess of 20 years, almost the entirety of my adult life. It is a place I love and am incredibly passionate about. Unlike Don, I have quite a different perspective on the situation around the wastewater treatment plant. I address you today in relation to item 23, Christchurch Wastewater Treatment Plant, update on the community wellbeing response workstream. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that the fire at the wastewater treatment plant was an accident. It was not the fault of council staff or elected officials. However, the responsibility, both morally and physically, to act on the impacts and implication of the fire sits entirely with council. I acknowledge that the process of resolving the physical issues resulting from the fire in terms of removal of debris and the implementation of alternative treatment processes has happened in a timely fashion given the current environment. I acknowledge the work council staff have done recently to share information with impacted communities. I attended the community meeting held at South Brighton Community Centre, the final of 3, and found it informative, given the information not available to staff at the time, and was impressed by those who spoke. I am aware, however, that it was the final meeting of the delivery and the process in place had been refined by council staff. I'm aware that the noxious odour in our hapori has been living with for an extended period of time has improved in recent weeks. However, the impact of living under its veil on our community should not be underestimated. I spoke at the community meeting of a need to understand the implications of the fire. We yet another blow to a community who has suffered and continue to suffer remarkable events that impact on their wellbeing and mental health. It is a community that has not had time to recover from the first blow in 2010, owing to delays in repairs to personal property and the completion of promised remediation repairs by the council. I begged for an accessible wellbeing response and offered spaces and support to provide this. I have not seen any evidence of this. Not one community member who attended the meetings or has submitted about the implications of the fire feels unaffected. For some, that has meant the publicly acknowledged physical effects of headaches and nausea, but for all, it has taken a toll on their wellbeing. While I have acknowledged the recent community engagement, this has come far too late. It is my understanding that Councillor Johansson began to ask questions in regard to the health implications of people living in the proximity of the plant after the fire immediately in the days followed. And yet it has only been in recent weeks that we're receiving definitive information from health professionals in regards to this. The wellbeing implications of being left to wonder for months if you, your family, your pets, your gardens are slowly being poisoned are enormous. For people who are already struggling, this fear can be debilitating. The exclusion of our community, South Shore and South Brighton, from the affected zone frankly stunned me. Council staff acknowledged in the public meetings that initially the South Brighton and South Shore communities were only being affected 30% of the time. However, as autumn and winter set in and the accompanying predictable seasonal changes to weather patterns occurred, this meant it rose to 50% of the time. I find it incomprehensible that something can be considered to not be impacting your life when you're experiencing 1/3 to 50% of the time. As a result of this, our community by and large did not apply and continues to not apply for the welfare package offered by council. The vast majority are unaware that is now being made available to them, or either see it as a waste of already limited energy, or are so upset by the process they consider it as an affront. Members of our community, many of whom who work in health, have repeated the implications on wellbeing of not feeling safe to have a walk outside or work in their gardens, of having to keep windows closed and dry washing inside, let alone the health ones. I know personally that being outside is an essential component of keeping myself mentally well. All health professionals advise outside activity as supporting mental well-being. People have not felt safe to do this because of important health information was not communicated in a timely fashion. Communication must improve to encompass all members of our community, not just those who have ready access to social media. That communication must happen in a far timelier fashion to reduce the impacts of anxiety of the unknown in our community. Last night, Council published a recommendation in regards to treating the discoloration of paint. This involved cleaning it ourselves. I have real safety concerns in regards to this for the less physically able or elderly members of our community who I really don't want up ladders hand washing their homes. I'd like to suggest that some funding be allocated to a community board level to assist people with this. I'd also suggest that the extent of the discoloration is heavily underreported. Finally, it is my understanding that a community needs analysis has been done to help inform your decision making. I have a few questions in relation to this. Will a report with the information collected be made public? Can we find out the scope of the community needs analysis? Who did you talk to? What questions were asked and how did you ensure you got a wide range of community voices in the process? What recommendations were made from this needs analysis? I sincerely hope that everyone involved in this process can take the time to seriously consider that while the initial event may be over or easing, the wellbeing implications of it on a community already under considerable pressure may be felt for some time and should be supported. I am concerned that our community voice is not being heard, and as a council seeking to improve levels of satisfaction and engagement amongst ratepayers, this simply cannot be allowed to stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that has left a small amount of time for questions. Anne Galloway, you've got a question.
Yes, kia ora, Samantha.
Hi.
Hi, I know how much work the comms team have done in trying to get information out to the community. And I'm just wondering what you think could have been done better to have achieved what you would hope to that they would have achieved.
So in terms of physical access, there was a lot of stuff online on social media and on the council website. If you don't readily access that, you cannot get that information. We have a significant number of elderly people in our community who aren't on Facebook, who don't follow the council websites. There should have been a letterbox drop right at the beginning, and those should have continued through the period to keep people informed and give people the opportunity to get that information. That's my personal opinion.
One other question,
Please do.
if that's
Yep.
okay. You use the word poisoned, and I'm just wondering if you want to just sort of elaborate a bit more on that.
Because people didn't know what was happening, and I appreciate they're not being poisoned, but what happens when you don't know what the situation is and you see your house start to discolour and people tell you there's hydrogen sulphide in the air, is people go into panic mode. And they do. Our community has literally been too scared to eat the vegetables from their garden because they don't know what's in it. And they have been scared to go outside because they're worried what they're breathing in. What I would have appreciated is a much more timely response in terms of this is not going to kill you. That's what I mean. So I'm not saying it is poisoning anyone. I'm just saying in people's heads, because they didn't get that information fast enough, and some people still haven't got that information, that's what people are worried about. And people here, they've got nothing left. There's no reserves. They're done. They're exhausted. You add something else on top and this is added on top, it breaks them.
Thank you. I'll take one further question from Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. And just to acknowledge the work that you're doing in the local community, we've waited a long time to get this plan, and obviously there's another community meeting around the health impacts coming up shortly. Do you think it would be good for us to maybe approve this in principle today and not stop the key things in it from going ahead, but also set up a process to get community feedback around the plan? So that it gave community groups. I don't
want the process stopped. Yeah. I want to keep things to keep moving.
Right.
What I would like to see is that really clear acknowledgement that this isn't over for people like people still are looking at their houses. I have to walk past my sort of wall every day where the paint's all discoloured, and it's really just distressing. You just look at it and go, ugh. And I'm up to play on all the information that you guys have. Other people aren't, particularly older members of our community, and they're frightened. They're literally frightened, and that's not okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so an opportunity for public to give feedback, or the community to give feedback on the plan.
I still think we need to get more information to the community.
Yeah.
All right. Look, thank you very much indeed. Thanks very much indeed, Samantha, for the presentation and for engaging in the questions this morning as well. We appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So now we move to our final deputation of the meeting, Philip Duffy, who also should be online. Do we have Philip there?
Yes, you do. Thank you.
Philip, good morning. Thank you for joining us. You have 10 minutes for the deputation, and if you wanted to allow time for some questions within that, it's open to you to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. Ko Philip Duffy toku ingoa. So my name's Philip Duffy. I also live in South New Brighton. And I want to tautoko everything that Samantha has just said before. I probably am not going to put it as eloquently as she has, but I suppose I just want to give you a bit of an overview of our experience and views on what the community package and the community support has been to date. So overall, it's been almost 10 months now since the fire and the impact on the community. As Samantha noted, in South Shore and South Brighton, we're outside of the zone where people are getting the support that's been provided by community. And, we're quite confident that council at the moment is doing probably all they can to, abate the smell and get rid of it as soon as they can. We seem quite confident that the measures under the way are doing that. But I suppose what we're not necessarily confident at is that support and what has been done to mitigate the damage to that is actually whether that's been adequate or not, because we don't actually believe that. What has happened has impacted the poorest communities in Christchurch, Eastern Christchurch. People who don't have significant access issues access to health, access to justice, and that becomes exacerbated in situations like this. Don's done quite a good job to help get people together for matters like this and to get collective action. And a lot of people haven't been happy with the response. And, we have gone to see lawyers, and we have been told by several barristers that there's a really strong case for tort of public nuisance, and that there could be a class action put together and, a statement of claim lodged. But the fact of the matter is that we are in the poorest communities and we don't have the resources to actually do that. And we're actually relying on the council to understand what their duty of care is and understand that it is the responsibility of council to take reasonable measures to address the harm that's been caused through the action from this fire and the impacts on our lives, on our properties, and on our health. If this wasn't a more affluent suburb, I dare say that there would be a statement of claim lodged, and that it would be for a significant amount of damages, and it would have aspects of impacts to property, impacts to health, and general damages, and that a package would be put on the table which would be much larger than what it is, and be addressing the impacts a lot more than what's currently being proposed. But you are in the poorest communities, and we don't have the resources to actually do that. So we're relying on council to come to the table and actually, put reasonable measures to address the harm that's been caused by the accident that the council is responsible for. So in that respect, I don't think it's reasonable to expect members of our community to clean their houses, to get rid of the damage that has been caused. We don't think it was reasonable that we should have to pay for to see the doctor when we're having the health impacts from this. It should be a cost that council is taking care of and funding, because it's damage that the council is responsible for. So I suppose, just wrapping up, I agree with everything that Samantha said. She's probably said a lot more eloquently than I have, but I don't believe that what's put on the table is in any way reasonable to the damage that has been caused here. It has impacted our ability to go outside. A lot of people love living in South Shore and South in Brighton because we've got access to the estuary there, we've got access to the beach. except we haven't been able to enjoy that. We haven't been able to breathe fresh air for the last 9 months. I mean, it is getting better, and the worst of the impacts are hopefully over, but it hasn't been a very pleasant journey. And the fact that community members have felt the need to have to go and try and engage lawyers, even though they don't have the means to actually do so, and to fund it in the end is, I suppose, representative that more needs to be done here. I think that's probably all I've got to say at the moment. So, kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you very much indeed. So that has left time for some questions. If indeed there are questions, Jake McClellan, you've got a question.
Hey, thanks for that, Philip. Are you, in terms of the cleaning up of the discoloration on your property and the properties in your area, are you aware that, the information we have is that discoloration will go away of its own accord in time?
Yeah, I read what was provided to that, but so I suppose it said that it can with when the sunny months come through, but I suppose what if it doesn't? And I mean, I suppose, and it has. I mean, anyone independent who's been looking at that, I suppose, council's got the two roles here: is to make sure you're doing the right thing by people who are affected by this, but I'd also imagine that there's a sense of trying to mitigate any potential liabilities as well. So I suppose there's a need to have some kind of independence and that overarching lens on what you've been looking at here and you've been engaging in that respect. So
are you suggesting that the information might not be correct, or are you suggesting that we should preemptively clean the houses in case, in anticipation that the information's not correct?
Yeah, I think that you should be cleaning the houses, and I think we should be having an independent lens over, I suppose, the advice that's been provided to on these matters as well.
So you think we should clean the houses because you don't believe the information's correct?
I think we should be cleaning the house. I don't think it should be up to. So you've said that it would decrease over time. I think that was what was said. That it's probably still going to stay. So I don't think it should be up to residents to take measures to take away the damage that's been caused by that. So the colour discoloration. My house is actually fine. My neighbours' houses are the ones who are impacted, and similarly, it's elderly people and people who won't be able to do these measures themselves. And there hasn't been any work by council to actually understand, to go to let a drop in houses to get a good sense of how many houses have been affected by this.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yanni.
Yeah, thanks, Philip, for your deputation this morning. Just wanted to check with you. Are you aware of any issues with odour or concern over damage to internal furnishings in houses? Carpets, curtains, anything? I was just trying to understand if you think there's a gap around council understanding what the impact has been around people's furnishings as well on the inside of houses.
Yeah, thanks, Yanni. For myself, I haven't had that kind of experience in my place, but I am aware of people in Bromley who've had that experience in particular. And I suppose the other thing that we're aware of, we're aware of that the Department of Education provided air purifiers to the schools in the areas, and why hasn't that been provided to members in the community? So it's kind of been a lack of information that's been out there. I think at the community meeting, I spoke to the members of the council who are looking after the community benefits package, and there hasn't been. And one thing we've noted there hasn't been any information provided. So when the winds do blow from the wastewater plant, and we're getting the stench, what measures do we take? Reasonable measures do we take to look after our health when that happens? Is it close the windows up? Get the heat pump going? Something. Actual practical measures to look after our health. That's been a real lack in here, and that was taken on board, and it said that there would actually be measures to address that, but I haven't seen anything come from that.
Yeah,
we hear that measures.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I've been asking the same questions for probably about 5 months now as well. But just the only other thing I was going to ask is, I mean, given the lack of confidence in the community around this issue, do you think an external independent review of the response would be warranted so that we can learn any lessons from it and look to improve going forward?
Yeah, I 100% do. The comms, obviously, yeah, like Samantha said, social media and online, they're quite good now in the sense of what's happening with the cleanup. But again, I'd say that the lack of actual practical measures to look after our health, that was lacking. The idea that people everyone doesn't have access to the internet and on social media, that's been lacking. And yeah, I think the fact that there was only really a response to this when it first got brought up by the media, and this is after I know several of my my friends had been complaining to the council about it, but nothing actually came about until there was a national news article, and it's quite reactive, I suppose. So it was slow, but it's quite comprehensive online now. But there's definitely been holes in the response, and I think an independent look into it would be warranted.
All right. Look, thank you very much indeed. And Philip, thanks very much indeed for taking the time to present and speak with us this morning, and for engaging in the questions that have been asked as well. We appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
Can I ask a question about any action coming from these deputations?
Yeah, we're out of time for the deputation, unfortunately.
No, not of staff.
When we get to staff, yep, there'll be the opportunity to ask questions of staff.
Well, this is really about Don Gould's one, which wasn't on the agenda, but just whether the Chief Executive has picked up that complaint about that vacuum sewer that's not working properly, and we can find out some more information. We will find out.
Yeah, there's been more than a small amount of commentary on social media about that particular
Okay,
matter.
well, I haven't been privy to that, so I'm reading my agendas. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so coming back to our agenda. So thanks to the three people that brought deputations to us this morning. Presentation of petitions, there are none. Supplementary reports, the resolution to include the supplementary report that contains these two items was agreed on the 28th of July. So that now sees us moving